Some conversations feel different, not because of the topic, but because of the person sitting across from you. Today's episode is one of those conversations, because today, I am not just speaking with a guest, I am speaking with a friend. Our friendship survived without building it on proximity, daily routines, or shared classrooms. This friendship was stretched across time zones, across life stages, across silence, change, and everything in between. This friendship began in one chapter of life and somehow found its way through every chapter that followed. Through distance, through growth, through moments of disconnections and reconnections. Our special guest and my friend Abby is someone I've seen not only in her professional roles as a social worker, a family coach, a strength-based leadership trainer, but as a human being who shows up again and again for others. Today, Abby is a licensed clinical social worker, therapeutic coach, a leadership consultant working across ministry and organization settings. She focuses on high-achieving women in leadership, helping them address burnout and implement sustainable systems for both personal and professional growth. Her work blends clinical experience with deep understanding of leadership and performance. Welcome back to another episode of Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, STJ, and I am so excited to introduce to our community and our world and our space, Abby Vickery. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Slava. I'm pretending that we're sitting on a bench in Magic Kingdom.
We need this pretend and we need this memory with everything that's going on around the world. I thought we'll have this intimate hour together away from family, responsibilities, spouses, kids, and just talk about Abby. So what I want to start with is to share with our audience and listeners, who are you when you are not holding space for everyone else?
That is a really, really good question. So I decided to be very intentional and vulnerable with you. Hopefully I don't start crying or something like that, because I am a crier. I'll try hard not to. But to be very honest, I think that I am in a stage of my life where I'm continually figuring that out. I have spent the better part of my life showing up for other people at the cost of myself. And as I, was younger, I didn't really notice that very much in my body and my soul. It was just kind of we're going to show up this way and we're going to do our best and we're going to achieve and perform and show up for people. And as I got older, that cost me more. And so I'm definitely in a season of my life where I am reflecting on that and trying to very much practice what I preach to other high achieving women, and figuring out what that looks like in my own life.
That's really very important point, because I have addressed it with your husband, Eric, who's been my dental coach for, 20 years. And that's when I met you. And it's, and another thing that I learned, it's burned out, right? Just you burn out emotionally, physically. I've been doing dentistry for 27 years, and it's not the dentistry that really exhausts me. It's just giving up a lot of me to the team and to the patient to make sure that, I manage everybody's expectations, basically. And that, as we advance in the years, we don't recover as fast as, when we're in the 30s and the 40s. So our body yells out or screams out even louder when we get older, that you need to slow down.
Yes. Yes. After I graduated with a bachelor's, I started as a caseworker in Child Protective Services, and very unexpectedly, unplanned, got pregnant with our first son, who is now 27, just turned 27, which is crazy. And so I was a social worker working for Child Protective Services, and then I had Noah and started to stay home. He was born prematurely, and it kind of forced, to really change the trajectory of what we thought our lives were going to look like. I thought I was going to go back to work part-time and things like that, and did not. And then ended up having another son and adopting 2 daughters. And then I went back to grad school. So they were in school when I went back to grad school. And before that, I did a lot of contract social work, usually in the field of adoption, but not always. And then when they were in school, I went to grad school, and then have done a lot of different things. That's the beautiful thing about social work, is you can do a lot of different things. And I knew when I was choosing my path in the helping profession, what drew me to social work was that I wanted to be able to help in a lot of different settings. And so social work allowed me to do that, whether it was in the hospital or in a ministry setting, which I'm doing now, or in a school, or in a therapeutic, more clinical setting in, mental health and county mental health. So I've gotten the wonderful, I say that with my whole heart, just so blessed to be able to work in all of those different arenas, because it's taught me a lot, and it's also allowed me to try a lot of different things, which I've really, really appreciated. He was born in 1999. That year, Mother's Day was on May 9th, which is when he was due, and he was born on March 22nd. I can't remember exactly how many weeks that is now. I'm not a math girl, but it's very premature. And so I was brought via ambulance from Augusta to Portland, Maine, and had him at the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital in Portland. And it really changed, our whole plan. Getting pregnant with him unexpectedly, I had already enrolled and gotten accepted for grad school, and we actually were planning a trip to Europe, and found out that we were pregnant with him, and it was the absolute best thing that's ever happened, and also was not our original plan. So.
Oh my God. So see how children in general, resilience, so very resilient. And it's amazing how the divine just sends with them so much power and so much energy that it just defies every, possibility or just the inclination that they might not make it. And look at him too. And he's doing missionary work. No, he's doing ministry, right?
He was. Yes, he is in ministry. He is what's called, it's kind of a fun term. He is a next gen pastor at a church in Denver, and is married to a really, really wonderful, incredible young woman. And they had Wells last May, so he turned 10 months old today, actually. And Wells was a gift to our family in a really difficult season of our lives, which is another timely blessing, for sure. So, we get out there to see them as often as possible. And it's honestly a joy. I haven't been able to really find appropriate words for, the way that feels. I think my favorite thing that I've been able to process and figure out is that when we met Wells, everything about him was so familiar. Which when you're meeting somebody for the first time, you don't really think that way. But being around him just feels really, really familiar, which is really cool. Eric is Pops, and Eric is trying very hard to have Wells say Pops before he says Mimi. So we have a little bit of a competition, going, but he says Mama and Dada, and he's mimicking all the things. He's just found his tongue. So Eric is as you know, one of the funniest people I've ever met. And so he is doing all sorts of things. He'll say, "Show me your tongue," and Wells sticks out his tongue, and it's really funny.
So you guys are going to have a lot of fun, because when kids have personalities that early, I worked at daycare, and your whole career is working with children, but they're very smart and they learn really, really fast. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And I hope, I can't wait for Ty and Naomi and Maya. Oh my God. It's funny how you see, like I said, flesh and blood, but they just copy that personality, and you see the little, your kid's personality in that little personality. It's so cute. All right, back to reality, because I can go on.
Exactly.
So you had Noah, and then you were signed up in graduate school, and you have Ty after, right? And then you guys moved back because Erica's from California. So you were in Maine. That's when I met you guys. And you went back to California. And then how, as far as your career, was there a gap? Like when you moved from Maine to California, did you have to hold off on what you wanted to do? Did you do the same thing that you did in Maine in California? How was that transition?
So I really, really, really loved being a stay-at-home mom. And my version of the way that I wanted that to look would be literally like, I've got the apron on and I go collect my eggs in the backyard, in the morning, and I have a mini donkey and live on a gentleman's farm. My husband is not that way, at all. So, he's not a camper. He's a 5-star hotel kind of guy. So we had a little, we did not have the gentleman's farm when my kids were growing up. We lived in suburbia, which was wonderful. And I'm not complaining in any way, but it definitely wasn't the picture that, I would have had. I love animals. So give me all the animals. So we moved back to California, and I stayed home, and we had just adopted Maya from Guatemala. And then we started the adoption process through our local foster care system. And we brought Naomi home when she was 2, and then adopted her when she was 4. And during that time, I was doing contract work for an adoption agency that was located in Central California. And so the beautiful thing about that was I could do it around my schedule. And then I went back to grad school when they were in school and in preschool. And I would do my homework at night after we put them to bed. And the program that I did was wonderful because it was in our town. But through Chico State University, but it was in the town that we live in, which is an hour from that university. And so I was able to go on Saturdays when Eric had the kids, and I loved every minute of it. I think that's the wonderful thing about learning. Like when you're in your lane, the things that you learn about are so exciting and fun. And I really felt that way. Like I loved my classes. I loved my professors. It was also a really interesting thing because I had gone to a private Christian university, and then being in social work, which is, there's a lot of depth and breadth in terms of, different political views and, all the culture and all of that type of thing that I hadn't been exposed to, not only in our professors, but in the type of learning that we did and the things that we read. And I was so grateful for that. And so I did that program and then graduated in 2012 from that program, and then started working full time from there in a lot of different venues. I mean, really, really different. Everything from county mental health to hospital to private practice to telehealth to school counseling. I did a lot of different things. That's the other great thing about being a social worker is when people look at your resume, they don't go, "Oh gosh, you're not consistent or you're not loyal." They look at your resume as a social worker and you're like, "Oh yeah, you're doing lots of different things because you're a social worker." So that's great, which was really fun.
So let's back up a little bit. So you went from Maine to California. First of all, you can take the girl from Maine, but you can't take Maine from the girl, right?
Thank you, Slava.
I can't imagine you not wanting to be in nature, because even if you're not a nature person, I lived in Maine for 2 years, and I didn't live up north where you were at. I was southern Maine, which a lot of Mainers don't consider Maine. But you cannot help but be in the beautiful nature of Maine. You want to be outside all the time because it's just so pretty. And it has that just mystical, energy about Maine. Even when we drive now from New Hampshire to Maine, it takes us like 90 minutes just to go to Portland, Maine. The moment you cross the border, you just feel this blanket of bliss. It's like, ooh, we're in Maine. It's so bizarre.
Agree.
I mean, Stephen King wrote about it in so many of his books. I think that's where the inspiration of the energy in Maine, it has its own special energy. So I'm not surprised you wanted that, but
I think about growing up in Maine and what a gift that was. And I was born and raised there. And we go back there, not as often as I would like, but this year I turned 50. And Eric was like, do you want to go on a trip? And do you want to, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go to Maine. So we're bringing everybody and staying at the lake. My dad lives on a lake, and, just waking up to the sound of the loons and sitting by the fire at night is like the most wonderful gift to my soul, truly.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I traveled Europe, and I was, in North Africa the past 2 years, and, I'm from Levantine and Jordan and living in Saudi Arabia. It just, I don't blame you. Maine, it's just I left my heart in Maine. Of all the places I've been, all the places I lived in. And I always say it, if it wasn't for my Egyptian darling, just like Eric, I would be still in Maine, because it's such a special place on earth, I think. So,
Yes.
you wear so many hats. Did you right now, or even, through your career or even your past, did you always see yourself doing this kind of work? Abby, when did you, how old were you? And I know I wanted to do dentistry. I was inspired by the new dentist who was in Saudi. I was 8 years old. I don't know if you listened to the episode. I talk about it.
I have always, and I think you are similar to this too, Slava. I feel in so many ways kindred spirits with you, but I have always been someone that just naturally people will talk to and feel, a degree of safety pretty quickly. And that's something I noticed when I was young. That's something people would tell me, and adults that knew me when I was younger would comment on. And so I knew that I wanted to do something to help people. I would have loved to have been a nurse. And unfortunately, I am quite squeamish when it comes to all things body fluid. And so, when I was a social worker in a hospital, that was a little difficult, actually. And so I thought, okay, maybe I can get over that and learn to ignore or whatever, but I was very drawn to psychology, and so that's what my undergrad was in, and I really loved it. And so I knew, I didn't have any hesitation. Once I was taking those classes, I was like, okay, this is for me. And then after that, it's really just choosing the path of helping that you want to do with that type of undergraduate degree. And my choice would have been to be a licensed marriage and family therapist or go into clinical social work. And the reason I chose clinical social work is because I knew that while, being in a clinical setting and doing one-on-one or couples therapy or family therapy, I really loved that. I wanted to be able to do some different things. So as an LMFT, you can't work in a hospital, or different things like that. You can't be a school counselor in the same way. And so that's why I chose that route. And when I'm working with younger adults and they're like, which path do I choose? I have that conversation with them. Do you see yourself sitting, one-on-one with somebody, and you're in an office and you're in a clinical setting? Or do you see yourself running into the emergency room post-trauma, doing a trauma assessment and the adrenaline and all of that, which I loved. And so that's why I chose that path.
It takes a special person to have that kind of, energy. So, so there's a concept called the strength space leadership. And I spoke to Dana and Destry about it, in the episodes I had them on. But I want to know from you, through the line of work that you do, what does that really means from a social worker point of view, and also from the leadership consulting that you are doing?
Absolutely. So there's a couple different ways to look at that. There is, of course, and I know you know a lot about this, but there is Clifton Strengths, previously called Strengths Finder, where they're looking at the different themes of your strengths, and how does that show up? What is the, sometimes we say the shadow side or the dark side of that strength, and what is the healthy side of that? There's that, approach, but in general, a strengths-based approach and a strengths space is being able to look at, a person comes to us with their personality and their values and, the things that have happened to them, their capital T and little t traumas. And when you are serving someone, to be able to highlight and lean into their strengths that are innate to them. And I think often when we're going through hard things, those are not really the forefront. They're not things that we naturally look at. They're not naturally something that we work from. And so as a helper, to be able to highlight what those are in somebody else and be able to say, this is who you are. This is what you've got. And that's amazing. And how do we explore that? How do we lean into that? How is it serving you? How is it not serving you? An example that I can give you from my own life, and again, this is me being, this is opening my soul to you, is one of my Clifton Strengths is responsibility, and I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest. It has served me, sure. I think it's actually served other people in my life more than it's served me, but I bleed for it. So whatever it is that I step into, I also have belief. So whatever it is that I'm passionate about, that I step into, that I give to myself, I will bleed for. And so it has cost me. It has cost me in relationship. It has cost me at work. And that's what I was referencing at the beginning of our conversation too. Just as I get older, learning, to notice my body, the cues that my body gives me when I am doing that too much. There's a beautiful side of that. And there's also a shadow side. And I have physically felt the shadow side of that as I've gotten older.
I agree with you 100% because, I mean, ability is one of my strengths, I think, in discipline, but it's just being too responsible. Sometimes it will weaken you. It will just drag you down. So just like anything else, when you play upon something way too much, it becomes your weakness, not your strength, right? It's like, eating your favorite food all the time, overworking out, oversleeping, not sleeping too much because you're overthinking, it becomes a weakness because you just you abuse it.
I turned 50 on June 3rd, Slava. Oh my goodness. I can't even believe it.
The 50s. I'm going to be 57, Abby, in June.
But you look 30. You are 30 the most
years
elegant.
Away being the 6-0. I told Ehab, how did this even happen? It's so crazy. Mm-hmm. Enjoy the rest of your 40s because 50s are, I tell everybody, all my patients, and I have patients in the 60s and the 70s, and they tell me, we share stories all the time and we compare notes all the time. The 50s are really test the female body. It pushes it to the edge, seriously. And we joke around. If you make it through the 50s, if you make it beyond 55 and you are still sane, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. But it's so challenging because you are in your prime, right? You have gained life experience. You finally have the aha moment. I got everything set up. I'm used to my life. I got everything figured out. Even your career. Especially with you, look at you. You're doing a lot of leadership and consultation. You start really, really simple, and now you are out of the public arena into more a private, exclusive, community and practice. And you finally got really comfortable. It's oh, this is really comfortable. I'm really enjoying it. And then the 50s hit and things you have to be challenged with in private every single day. Between you and your body, between you and your mindset, between you and your emotions, between everything just changes. So all I'm saying is if you can get to Maine as many times as possible, because that's one of the things that really keep me sane. I used to wake up and tell Ehab, you got to take me to Maine today. I just got to go.
I love that.
We go for a day. I swear to God, ask him. I wake up on Saturday mornings. I'm getting ready. He goes, where are you going? It's like, I'm going to Maine. I'm just going to Kennebunk or Portland. I just want to be there and just breathe that fresh air, clean air, and just be with Mainers. And I come back, I was like, okay, I'm recharged. I'm ready to go. But, I can't wait for that. It's going to be a huge celebration. So if you need any help, let me know. I know we are across the continent, different time zones, but I'll be very happy to help you out as much as I can. Within your line of work, what are some of the patterns that you are seeing over and over again working with families?
I think the biggest thing is that truly, I would say the main theme is that past hurts and wounds are reflected in present communication. And until those patterns are addressed and there is the ability to really work through that, then it's a pattern that repeats over and over again. And there's just a lot of hurt. So I see that in marriages. I see that in families. I certainly see that in my own family. And, those things that, even if it has seemed like something smaller, usually there are repeats in communication patterns that happen over and over. We know that in marriage, in terms of the way that we argue, which by the way is not a bad thing at all. But there are patterns that repeat over and over, and it's so important to be able to identify what they are and uncover what the root is of that fear or, the anger, whatever it is. So that's something that I see quite often.
So you mentioned communication. Do you think, because I addressed it, I addressed it with Elizabeth, who is the marriage and family therapist out of Alabama, and I addressed it with, I think, Destry too. And I talked to on the show, I talk to a lot of women in leadership positions, which is therapy or corporate, and you guys are all we are all in agreement that there is a lack of communicative skills, especially with the new generation. Try to bring everybody together, sit down around the table and have dinner or conversation. It's like nobody has time. Everybody's busy. That doesn't work out for me. And before you know it, it's like, all right, I'm just going to forget about that. And then you look back, it's like, oh my God, it's been months since I've seen so-and-so. So do you believe that too? Because that's been addressed a couple of times.
Absolutely do. I absolutely do, Slava. I think about, even in the time that I have in my career as I've served children and families, the changes in, really what the issues are in the context of the family and what's affected that, what's triggered that issue, in the way that you expressed. And I absolutely think that it is a shift in values. A family or a person, an individual might not tell you, oh, my value, used to be this and now it's this, but there has been a value shift because our values are expressed in our habits, right? For better or worse, that's the truth. We don't like to acknowledge that, but if you tell me that your value is family and togetherness and that doesn't show up in your life, then that's not an expression of your values. The way you're living, there's a misalignment somewhere, which is a lot of what we address in therapeutic coaching. You are not aligned with the way you want to live your life, and your values. And so I really think that it has a lot to do with technology. I am not a technology hater. It is fascinating to me now, and I even have talked through this with my son and daughter-in-law, that there has been such a pendulum swing. There's a really popular book right now out that a lot of young parents are reading called Hunt, Gather, Parent. And it is this, going back to our roots and the way that our values used to be expressed pre-technology. And I think that there's just such a disconnect and isolation that naturally happens. And the other thing that I see, especially in young adults, is because they've grown up in that culture, that tech culture, then they don't have the skills, they don't have the emotional intelligence and I'm not saying that they don't have it, they don't utilize it, it's not a muscle that they flex, because it is it is flexed differently when you are using technology and when that's at the forefront of the way that you communicate. So you're seeing things now like people buying landlines for their homes and not giving, there's such a thing as a gab phone that has no, actual internet or anything on it. It's just a device that you use to call. And so that pendulum is swinging back, which I think is awesome. And we can also celebrate technology and what it does for us at the same time.
I always said it. I believed, Ihab, he's just really techie, and he's into progressive innovation, and I agree with him. Technology is going to help a lot of people. Like it's a double-edged sword, right? And just like everything else, if on it too much, it becomes this unhealthy codependency relationship. If my phone is not charged, I'm not going to be okay. If I don't have my phone on me, I'm not going to be okay. So if my phone is not okay, I'm not okay. But also, technology becomes the trigger that dysregulates a lot of these kids, right? Because it's all about comparison and almost like I call it the digital competition. Like, oh, you have this phone, I have this phone. You have this game, I have this game. You have access to Instagram, I have access to Instagram. It's constantly comparing and competing with that, and that's not really a healthy, competition. Competition can be healthy, but also the technology is helping a lot of the medical innovation, a lot of the surgeries right now, the diagnosis, the differential diagnosis, in the medical field, in the pharma field, in agriculture, in aviation, there's a lot of significant impact of the advanced technology that we see around the world, but we don't recognize it, or we don't really appreciate, because we just, it's part of our world. And they tell you right now where we're living right now in this age is the most advanced humanity ever seen. It's the healthiest, the cleanest, and the safest. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but it is true. If you look back, now, if you're saying, oh, it could be much better. Yeah, of course it could be much better. If you think about it, human created technology. So these kids, sometimes they think that technology just drops from the sky, from the spaceship, that alien created it. And I keep reminding the young generation, guys, the AI was created by human brain, right? Computers were created by human brain. Phones were created by human brain. Humans created all that. It's not that technology were sent to us, overnight. And they look at me, it's like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. So I said, okay, don't be like completely controlled by it, because that human brain that created the technology is controlling your brain. So one brain's creating a controlling brain. You guys should be equal. You guys should not be competing that way. You should not let something or someone dominating you. You need to have the intelligence to say, all right, I'm going to pick this device to use it for certain things. I'm going to drop this device because I want to go have dinner with my family. I want to go have a walk with my kid. I want to go play ball with my kid and just have the human part of it. It's okay to have both. But unfortunately right now, because everything is so monetized and, in technology driven, you either this or that. Why can't you be both?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why can't we have the balance?
Exactly. I love when you said, I love the word you use, the duality of that. That's absolutely brilliant. Have you heard of the analog life? Because that's what you're describing. This is a new concept to me. I'm just learning about it. So I hope I don't misspeak in any way. Yes, you need to look this up. It's fascinating. So the analog life is, sort of going backwards to I would say the intensity of technology and the way that it has overtaken our lives. And so they have these really cool expressions of that. Well, you can have an analog bag. And so actually some of it that I've seen online is adorable that you would love, because we love LL Bean, and the little boat and totes, and you get a boat and tote and you put, your needlepoint and your knitting and your word scramble and your journal and things that are not technology related. And you have your analog bag, and that helps you to get away from your devices. So even, moms that are sitting in the pickup line, instead of, looking down like this, you get out your analog bag and you use that. And there are, more tools to allow us to be able to, in your perfect word, express the duality of that living.
We should be both. You know what I'm saying? Because
exactly.
I remember I always tell my team, I said, listen, guys, do not be so dependent on technology, especially the young associates, right? You gotta be able to think on your own, to troubleshoot certain things. My generation is the last, as far as dentistry is concerned, is the last generation, I think, that was trained on both. How do you use your hands and your brain and trying to figure things out and troubleshoot? Technology is awesome while it's working. Technology is awesome while you still have power. Technology is awesome while you know how to apply it or learn it, right? I had a moment, I was just finishing a root canal and lights out. We lost power. It was the middle of the winter.
Oh my goodness.
Right? And I had my magnification loose, but back then they did not have the attached overhead light. So I looked at my assistant and she goes, oh man, we got to finish this. I'm like, yes, I'm almost done. It's just got to seal the tooth and close it. She goes, okay, don't move. Like, we're not going to wrap this up. And the patient opened with a rubber dam in their mouth. And they just looked at me with open wide eyes, like almost like, finish this. I want to be done. She went and grabbed a flashlight and we finished the root canal under a flashlight. I had to, right? Because what are the options, right? Wrap it up, bring the patient back in. You're not, but I'm almost there. I have my loops. I can look at the canal. I can seal it. And we just finish it holding a flashlight. So, but this generation, absolutely not. Okay, lights out, wrap it up. Let's just bring the patient back in, because if they're not able to use technology, it almost like, I'm not sure if it's going to be accurate. You do your best and you hope for the best. That's what I teach all the time. But what keeps me up at night is like, if we don't teach them how to be independent of technology, independent of us too, not holding their hands, how are they going to continue moving forward, progressing without us? Moving on. As your friend, I see how much you give with every single person and every single thing that you actually touch, Abby. And I just wanted to ask you, how does it ever feel heavy? I mean, I talked about how I come home, I'm completely drained, and I tell Ehab, I'm married to work, because Ehab comes home too, and we want to talk about work. It's like, okay, you got 1 hour, but that's it, because I have no energy left.
I do. I would be lying to you if I said that I didn't. And I have reflected on that a lot over the years, at different stages in my career and in my life in general. And I think there's been different intensities prior to learning the boundaries that I have now. I think that, the truth of it is that I don't believe that I would be able to show up for people in the way that I do if I was detached. And it takes an incredible amount of emotional, even physical energy, to be very present and, mirroring and leaning in and really, really listening. And I think the other thing that I've learned over the years is that it can be as much about what you don't say as what you do say. So, obviously clinicians have different, styles, and I have friends that I would say are more bulldogs and, are going to be really mouthy with you. And then I have friends that are more the sit back and nod and, that type of thing. And I'm probably somewhere in the middle. But that active listening and that mirroring and things like that does take a lot out of me, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of the things. But I wouldn't want to do this work detached. I don't think that would be fair to the people that I serve. And And I think that's why I've had this heightened awareness as I've gotten older of, what am I responsible for? What am I not responsible for? How do I care for myself? How do I show up for the people that I love? In the way that aligns with my values and my belief. And that's definitely been a process. I thought that I had boundaries early on that now reflecting, I realize I didn't. And I brought that work home. I think the most notable would be when I worked at the hospital. I was a medical social worker and my kids were in school, but they were young. And I didn't last 2 years. In that role, mainly because the schedule was not flexible. So like if you had a soccer game or a basketball game at 4:00 in the afternoon, you had to take the whole day off. And that was really difficult to navigate with 4 kids. But even more than that was once people figure out that you're a kid person, then you usually get assigned to, for lack of a better word, those types of scenarios. And so I worked a lot in oncology and helped kids say goodbye to their parents. And that was the first time in my career that on my drive home, I could not listen to music. Usually I would listen to worship music or something like that, favorite songs. And I didn't even have the capacity to listen to anything. And I would roll down the windows and drive home and take the long way so that I could take as much space as I could before I got home. And there was a particularly devastating case one night, and they asked me to stay late past my shift and be there until the mom passed away. And I remember that night when I was driving home, the drive from the hospital to my house is through our small town, but it was active and people were going out to dinner, and I was stopped at a red light and people were passing on the crosswalk and they were laughing and talking. And I remember thinking, how are they doing that? Like, don't they know that somebody's life just ended and that life for the people that she loved is standing still? And the weight of that was really, really, really difficult to work through. And I've had a few other, really significant things that I have walked with people through, and I don't want to do that in a detached way. But yes, it does cost me something.
So how do you regulate yourself? Like, how do you the long way, but even going home, you've seen what you've seen, and you could not unsee what you have seen. I mean, I've done gross anatomy, cadavers, and we had to, like in dental school, we had to learn the background of that cadaver. My cadaver was homeless. He was a North Korea veteran, drugs.
Well, I think for me, it's really interesting. One of the biggest things is gratitude. And I know that sounds a little weird, but in the context of this, but I am so grateful for the opportunity to be able to sit with somebody in their deepest grief and pain. I am so grateful that I can hold space for them and be used in that way. I think about that every time, whether it's a little T or a big T trauma, just the gratitude that people would be, allowing me into that space. And I know that everybody has, different strengths and abilities and things. And for whatever reason, it's something that I feel very drawn to and led to and comfortable with, that chaos. And so I think gratitude is a really big piece of it. I think it's multifold. The other piece would be that I have a really wonderful community, and not that obviously because of confidentiality, they don't know necessarily what's what I am walking through with somebody, but just being surrounded by people that push you and, call the best out in you. And, that type of thing, getting to go to my happy place with my favorite Ehab and Slava and seeing, joy. And that's why I like Disney World, by the way. I figured it out. I don't know if I told you. I know that's a sidebar. I'll stop. But anyway, those types of things. And then as I've gotten older and my body has not bounced back as quick as it used to, one of the things that I am trying desperately to protect in this season of my life is slow mornings. We've gone through a challenging season as parents in the last few years, and my mornings were pretty chaotic for a while. We have a daughter with special needs. And so in the resolve of that over the past couple of years, one of the things, I love animals. I have amazing dogs. And so, drinking my coffee slowly and patting their heads and being grateful for the birds and the sun streaming through the window, and, getting ready slow and not being rushed, all of those things, makes my day totally different than when I have a chaotic, rushed morning. So I'm learning those things as I've gotten older, what feeds my soul. Walks and being in nature feed my soul. And my faith is something that I can't fathom being without. And so, those are things I think that sustain me for sure.
I have one patient that she got into bird photography, and she takes the most beautiful. Yes. She is she always loved birds, and she used to be a marathon runner. And then when she got diagnosed, she fell into depression. She lost a lot of weight. She made it through. She's very, very strong. So she disappeared from out of our practice for a while. And I didn't know what was going on. And then when I saw her again, reviewed medical history, I found that out. I was like, oh my God. And then because she always was a bird watcher and she knew her birds, she picked up photography, and that's her basically blessing, that she goes out in the woods and she spends hours and hours and hours. And maybe sometimes she'll take like 1 and 2 photos, but they're absolutely gorgeous. And she travels to Maine and Vermont, and she's such an outsy. But, I'm biased. I think because you're a Mainer, you have the ability to do what you do, because I think people from Maine are so in touch with their inner self, and also the divine and the creation around them, and the gratitude. So real quick, we talked about what do people not see about your work, and you have touch base on the very intimate moments with what goes inside of you when you are experiencing or you are witnessing like trauma or devastation or despair.
I don't think that we can prepare ourselves, in the ways that we think. I think it's so much about practical, knowledge and experience. And, you get the book knowledge when you're in school. But I think one of my favorite things to do actually is sit with young people as they're trying to figure out what path to choose. And if they want to be a helper, in the psychology field in general, there's just so many different paths within that. But I think the biggest thing is talk to as many people as you can and ask questions. What is your typical day? Because there are so many different paths within the field, and I think I shared this a little bit before, but when if you were to choose to be an LMFT, a marriage and family therapist, then what that looks like sitting with somebody in a room and having that one-on-one is very different than being able to do, a number of different things in social work. And if you want to do that, then take that path. So there's a lot. I think the thing that people don't realize before they get into the work is that there is a tremendous amount of mental and emotional preparation before you are one-on-one, or with a family or with a child, whatever. You're not just showing up. And if you are just showing up, then you're not going to be as effective as that person deserves. And not in any way that it's about you, it's about their process. But if you are not doing the mental, the emotional, the spiritual preparation before you get there, just like you have to do, Slava, in the same way, the Slava that shows up, and serves her patients because of the work that you do and because of how passionate and intentional you are and because of your relational approach, that looks different than somebody who comes in the door and just is, going through the motions clinically. And it's the same thing in my field in many ways. And so you have to be willing to do the mental and emotional preparation in order to serve people well. I think that's the biggest thing.
You're constantly reassessing your ways. And that's why you take classes, continue educating, because things are changing. There's so many evolved tools that can help you be better and be better for your clients, be better for your patient to manage those expectations. So last thing, how can people find you, Abby?
Gosh, so I would say the biggest thing is email and phone number. I don't use a website anymore. I used to, and I don't. But I can make sure that I give you the correct contact information if you want to share. And I really typically work most of the time, 95% of the time, by word of mouth, which is great. And I have fallen into a niche in the last few years of serving very high performing women. Which is awesome. And then I do a lot of grief work as well. So yes, I will make sure that you have that. And I wanted to share something with you really super quick about when you said birding. And I'll be really quick. So I am learning about that. And there is a book, I can actually get you the name of it. I'm not remembering it off the top of my head. I've just read it. And it's about this woman who is a birder, that was writing a book about grief. And so she was combining the two, which was really beautiful. And one of the things that she said that she loved about birding in correlation with grief is that birding taught her to look up. And I was like, that is the most beautiful thing. And I knew you would love that. So I had to share it with you.
That is beautiful. See, I said it right at the beginning of the episode that the divine will send us certain tools to help us get through certain things. So there's always a wisdom to it, because it's just the creation and the miracles that it's all around us. It doesn't have to be a digital device. That a lot of the stuff is just you have to look through nature. So make sure you get me the contact. We'll put it down in the description below.
I know your listeners know this, but gosh, what you see is what you get with this elegant, brilliant woman. And I'm super grateful to get to be able to sit and chat with you.
I love you, and you are my favorite meaner. Well, we have reached the end of our hour. As a reminder, these episodes are uploaded weekly on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube by the Mindset Mastery Moments. If you have enjoyed this, please like, share, and hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss any episodes, and it's free. This community is sponsored by humanity and supported by everyday people stories, just like what we heard from Abby. So please find us, join us, support us, and as always, be kind. Thank you for watching and listening. Hope to see you next time. This is Slava, the Jordanian.